To the surprise of absolutely no one, Josh Seiter has finally come out and admitted he is not trans. Let's dig into it. So hi guys, if you don't know, my name is Alexis. I am a trans woman and I share my life stories and opinions on social media. Strong emphasis on the opinions today because we are doing a strong opinion video. I will try and remain somewhat neutral, somewhere in the middle, but my opinion's gonna come out. I can't help it. I've watched some of these clips already that I'll go into in a moment, and it got me a little bit frustrated. Angry, I would even say. So if you don't know who Josh Seiter is, let's do a little backstory. So Josh Seiter was on The Bachelorette. He was eliminated, I think, in the first round, first week. I don't know, I'm not seeing it. Then following on from that, they began their social media career. From there, they faked their own death. They pretended to be bisexual and have a boyfriend. They pretended that they were going to marry a man and then didn't. And the recent thing that they have pretended to do or be is transgender. And it has been cringy. It has been embarrassing. Spoiler alert, we all knew. Roll the tape from like 3-4 months ago when I was like, this might be a trans person, but I think it's probably not. What I will say, it is a very clever PR stunt because their following has grown. I had never heard of this person before until now, and they're transitioning. I say that loosely because we don't see much semblance of a transition at the moment, other than a little bit of makeup and a change of top and nail polish. I said this is either a very confused trans woman or it's a man just trolling trans women, basically. And this video has confirmed without a shadow of a doubt to me that this is a man who is trolling trans women. I do, however, want to watch one of his old videos, just so if you haven't seen him or seen any of his videos, you have a little bit of context of why so many people were so angered and outraged by him.
Hey everyone! So I want to talk today about the elephant in the room that women don't like talking about, but we all think about: having a bulge. Having a bulge doesn't magically make you a man. Having a bulge doesn't negate your womanhood. A lot of us women still have our bits and pieces, and that's okay. So I think we really need to start changing the language and discourse around this issue and start normalizing it.
So, as you can imagine, for 5 or 6 months, we've had these sorts of videos. Very much mansplaining what it is to be a woman, saying that they're trans but not going to transition, they're not going to take hormones or get surgeries or remove the beard or the chest hair. Lots and lots of stuff that pushes people buttons, both trans people and men and women. Like, everyone, I think, has found it very irritating, and it's really got to a lot of people. I think a lot of women are very frustrated because the way that Josh is portraying the negative stereotypes of women is just grotesque. It was gross to watch, it was cringy, and it was uncomfortable. Whew, so why did Josh do it? We're going to go into the reason why he thinks he did it, and then I'm going to go into the reason why I think he did it, because they're very, very different things. We all have found out that this was a grift, this wasn't real, this was a social experiment by Josh outing himself on a talk show. I'm going to show a clip of the talk show. This is not right at the start because I can't bear to watch it or show you guys the start. So at the start of the video, Josh has on lipstick, makeup, and a scarf, and is still pretending to be trans, and then there's this dramatic reveal where someone baby wipes the face and he takes the scarf off and he's like, oh, I'm not trans, and it's really embarrassing, and it's just, it's so cringy. So I'm not going to expose you to it, but we're going to watch a little clip now of the rest of it.
I know what's going on.
Yes.
Well, I gotta be honest. For the last 5 months, I've been conducting a social experiment online to expose how gullible and how delusional the left is.
We love it, Josh. And now I'm so happy that you came on this program and you're so gracious to fly all the way here from Chicago to come speak with us and talk about how insane the world is that you putting on a woman face, I guess is that the best way to describe it?
Yeah, woman face.
You were accepted by some, you were demonized by most, and now you're saying this was all a ruse, this was a social experiment, and I know you studied sociology. Didn't you major in sociology?
I did, yeah.
So what you did is arguably one of the greatest social experiments of our modern internet age, in my opinion, and that's why I really appreciate you coming on here and talking about the real truth. So this whole time, this has all been a stunt to try to expose the weird ideology of the transgender movement?
Well, I would say any biological man putting on woman face and putting on makeup is pulling a stunt. They are faking being a woman. And so what I did was I faked being a faker. I pretended to be a pretender. We are all the same. We're all men that were putting on makeup and dresses and claiming we were women. And I hope that this could help some people understand that just because you put on dresses and makeup as a man doesn't magically make you a woman.
Okay. The thing that struck me the most from that, I'm obviously going to go into how that makes me feel as a trans woman, but the thing that strikes me the most, and this is going to sound sassy, so I'm really sorry. It's giving two men patting each other on the back, pretending that they're saving the world, when really they're adding nothing to the conversation. I'm really sorry. This great social experiment that Josh conducted, is it not a flop because we all knew? He was doing it to point out the extreme things about the trans community, or some of the trans individuals, with a very small percentage as well, might I add. A very small number of trans people who refuse to shave the beard, who refuse to transition, and X, Y, Z. And that's a whole video of how and what trans is for a separate day that I'm not going to go into now. So he's shining a spotlight on those people. But we all know, because it was so extreme, because it was so ridiculous, it was so over the top. I have not seen any trans woman compared to that. I've seen some have some aspects of that, the misogyny, the mansplaining, the dictating what it is to be a woman to women. I've seen that from a few trans women. I think pretty much everyone knew it was fake from the start. We didn't know why he was doing it, but we knew he was faking it. The funny thing is as well, oh gosh, I could go on about this. Does anyone else notice how he's sat there and he's got this big Cheshire Cat grin on his face? And he's so proud of himself. And that is reading a tiny bit or a lot. Arrogant, narcissistic, in love with himself, thinks he's God's gift, when really he just put on lipstick for 5 months and posted some Instagram videos. Okay, that was sassy, right? Okay. Let's go into the comment that Josh said. When a biological man who says they're transgender puts on makeup, they are faking being a woman. I'm not going to disagree, and I'm not going to agree, because there's a grey area, and that's what being trans is, because we are not biological women, and I think 99.9% of trans women know that. We know that we're transitioning socially, but biologically certain aspects of our anatomy, our body will not change, and we're aware of that. So I think it's a bit of a cruel statement to say that all trans women are men doing women face. I think that's a bit harsh. Maybe he was just meaning the select few, but there is other parts of the interview. There's a lot of stuff reading. He doesn't like trans women. That's what I'm gathering. Not just the crazy ones, the outrageous ones, all trans women. I am going to rein this ass in a bit, and I do want to say something like deep. For me personally, as a trans woman, I feel comfortable in my own skin. Whether he agrees with my life choices, whether he thinks I'm a man doing woman face, whether he thinks trans is real or not, whether he thinks I'm crazy, I don't care. Because at the end of the day, I am more and more comfortable in my own skin, and I'm living my life how I've always wanted to live it. I'm happy. I'm not hurting anyone. So why does it affect him so much? That's what I don't understand. Never understood that. I mean, I understand the outrageous ones, but most trans women aren't like the outrageous ones. We don't hear about most trans women because they're just living their life in stealth, maybe not wanting to be known as trans or not saying crazy stuff on the internet. Let's watch some more of this interview, because it makes me laugh. Video number 2. Don't put that in.
I think any trans person is an incredible actor. They're all pretending to be something they're not. You mentioned showing the absurd. I use reductio ad absurdum, or sometimes called reductio ad absurdum. And it's a form of argument in logic which tries to disprove a proposition by showing that when you take it to its logical end, it leads to absurd and illogical results.
Yeah.
And so that's really what I was doing, was showing that the whole idea of postmodern gender ideology is ridiculous and absurd, and I tried to be the most extreme version of it and take it to its logical end to show how ridiculous it is that people can actually believe that biological men are magically transformed into women because they're having a gender crisis. So I hope I showed how ridiculous and absurd it is.
He obviously admits he was going to the extreme of what some trans women can be, and their social views, their political views, and how they act around women and in society in general, really. So at least he admits that he was showing the extreme side of it. Do I think that there is any trans woman that acts like he has acted for the last 6 months? Absolutely not. Do I think there's some trans women that maybe don't always act in the best way and paint the trans community in the best light? Absolutely. So I'm not fully disagreeing with him. There is some truth in what he's saying, but it's just coming across in a hateful way. And that's always my problem with things. Like, if you're just going to state facts in like a neutral way, I will listen. But as soon as you start becoming a little bit bitter and cruel towards a group, I switch off and I no longer have interest. One of the phrases Josh says is biological men thinking they can magically transform into a woman. Again, I know there are some, and I've spoken about some of them on here, but most trans women, including myself, understand we don't magically transform into women. It would be lovely if that could happen or would happen, but it's not the case, unfortunately. For a lot of, well, all trans people, transition is slow, and I think sometimes it's so easy to forget that when you're not living it. Earlier on in my transition, when I still looked visibly trans, or even before I started presenting as Alexis, I was still trans. I just wasn't out yet. How I navigated social situations and bathrooms and things, I would say I did it the best for me. I didn't use a female bathroom for a very long time. Transition's not instant, it's overnight. It takes years. It's taken me 3 years to get to the point where I am now, and I'm still not finished. So I think most trans people, in the reality that we live in, especially when it comes to the poor access to healthcare that we have. This is the UK, by the way, just to point that out. Expensive surgeries that we have to fund ourselves, the amount of time it takes, and everything that we have to sort of deal with, I guess. Sorry to get heavy, but everything we have to deal with to transition. I don't think any of us are thinking it happens overnight, in all honesty. I think the ones where it's a man with short hair and lipstick saying, I'm a woman, I can use a female toilet, that's different to a trans woman, or transsexual as some people might say. Is it just me? I don't know why I'm whispering, because you could just turn the volume up, but is it just me? Like, the smirk, it's making me so uncomfortable. Like, throughout the whole video, I know I mentioned it earlier, but throughout the whole video, he's smiling at what he's saying. It's like he's so proud of himself. And I'm like, you didn't just invent the light bulb. You did a social experiment that everyone knew you were doing. Anyway, we have some more.
How did you catch yourself in this predicament? What made you, what set you off that said, you know what, I want to go and try to expose how weird all this transgender ideology stuff is?
Well, you just mentioned autogynephilia, so I'll address that first and then I'll address the second part of your question. Autogynephilia is when men are turned on at the thought of themselves being women. And I think a lot of trans women are turned on at the thought of themselves being women. Guess what? It doesn't magically make them women. It doesn't mean we have to accept that they're women. They are simply men turned on at the thought of themselves being women. That's great. We live in a free country. You can do whatever you want, but don't make your fetish my truth. I don't have to accept it. To go to the second part of your question, how did I come up with this? I was talking with some friends and we said this is patently false. Men do not magically become women. I said, let's look at the medical literature and what it says. It says that trans people don't have to transition, don't have to have gender dysphoria, don't have to get surgery, and don't have to get hormones. If they feel they are a different gender than their bio-sex, then they are trans and they are valid. And I said, understandably, this is ridiculous. Then I can present exactly how I am, and I can be trans and valid if I say that's my gender identity. And so I said, let me prove how ridiculous this is using reductio ad absurdum by being trans for 5-6 months, and hopefully people will understand then how ridiculous this is.
Okay, we've reached the end of that, but I still have plenty more to say. Do I agree with everything that I just said? No. Do I disagree with everything that I just said? Also no. Do I think the idea of self-identification is a little bit crazy? Yes. Do I think there is some moral issues with it? Absolutely. I think just socially, in so many different ways, I think self-ID is inherently going to cause bad things. Not always, but there will be an outcome of that. So AGP, I'm not going to go loads into it. I do have a full video talking about it earlier on in my channel. I believe it's a thing. Do I think many trans women are AGP? No. I think it's a very, very small percentage. We just see them more online because they're more outrageous, and that's what trends and goes viral. That's why we hear more AGP stories than trans women stories. So I do think that is true. And no, Josh, you don't have to think that we're women, because we are not. We're trans women. It's different, and I think most trans women know that. Do I think there should be some boundaries in place for people to transition or be legally called one gender to the other? I personally think there should be some medical infrastructure in place to protect themselves and to protect them socially in some aspects as well. So I do think there needs to be some sort of diagnosis of gender dysphoria for transition. And then I do believe personally, this is just how I view it. If your opinion's different, that's fine. It's just an opinion. But for me and my journey and how I view transition, to live an authentic life as a transsexual, there has to be an element of transition medically. I'm not saying that a trans person needs to get all the surgeries and look a certain way that is acceptable in the trans world and all of this. I'm not saying any of that. I'm not saying there's, and I'm not even saying there's a right or wrong way to transition. But I think for me personally, how I view it is that if you say you're trans, that's because you have gender dysphoria, and that to ease that gender dysphoria, you medically transition. That's what eases and alleviates the dysphoria. I've always believed that because that's how my journey was, and that's how my story is, and that's how my life has been. When people can just say I'm trans and then change their name and nothing else about themselves, I disagree with that. I struggle with that. I think that's a different thing. That's a different gender thing. That's not trans to me. And I know there's a whole trans umbrella thing, which I don't agree with. My major problem with this, thank you if you're still here listening to me rant and get sassy. My major problem with what Josh has done is the fallout. Obviously, he's done his social experiment and he's got the results that he thinks he wanted. But what happens if, so out of all those videos, seen by millions of people, what if, number one, what if people don't see this new video that it was a social experiment? What if they think Josh was a genuine trans woman, and that has then painted trans women in a light in that person's eyes that will affect how they view trans women? It's really created a very bad narrative. Along the last 6 months also, the more Josh videos that have come out, it's trended quite a lot. We've seen a lot of the bigger influencers talking about it, and it's created a lot of conversation and debate and negative ideologies around what being a trans woman is. So the damage that he has done, that's what my problem is. I don't disagree with everything he's saying. Some things I disagree with, some things I agree with. The aftermath effects of what he's done, I think that is something he should be held accountable for, because it's not okay in my opinion. I understand where his idea came from about the outrageous aspects in some things that we see online around trans women and trans and possibly non-binary within there, all intertwined in that whole thing. He was holding a mirror up to society and saying, look how stupid this is getting. And I get that. I really get that. But for me, the detrimental effect that he has had now on the trans community, how do you reverse that? How do you go back? How do you make people not think? I know people will see the video and be like, oh, he was faking it, it's not a real trans person. But then also part of the experiment was showing like what's a very small percentage of the trans women can be like, and then does that paint all trans women in that light? Does that make sense? So even though he's saying it's fake and it's a social experiment, some people can watch it and be like, well, all trans women are clearly like that. Do you know what I mean? Is that idea going to go out of their head? No, because it was so outrageous. We don't forget, no one's going to forget that. Do I think it was right or wrong what Josh did? We all have opinions. We all have beliefs. I would say, in my opinion, this stunt is going down on the wrong side of history, because I think over the next few years we're going to see trans issues get worse. I think we're going to see, I don't want to say it, because when you don't want to say the bad thing so the bad thing doesn't come true. And I don't want to get sad here or anything, but I'm getting increasingly concerned with the welfare of trans people, myself included. The reputation of trans women is just getting knocked down and down and down, and it's now coming into politics and how it can affect us in that way. And I'm just wondering, where does that end? Does it keep going? Do we stop being able to transition? Is that the end goal for I don't know. And that's what concerns me. So I personally think that in a few hundred years, when people look back on this time, I think Josh will be on the wrong side of it. Sorry if that was a little bit deep, that bit, but it was just my opinion. So one more thing I will say, that was only half of the interview, can you believe it? There is another clip, and it's where they go after creators who responded to Josh's transition, and one of those creators was Book Angel, someone who is lovely and who I have spoken to and I've done a video with before, and they got him so wrong, and I will react to it with Liam in our podcast next week, because obviously this video is probably quite long now, so keep an eye out for that. As an overall census, I think when you take out the social experiment side of things and why he did it and holding a mirror up to society, if you just remove all of that, all of the fluff, and just look at what he did, I think he's upset quite a lot of people. I think he's upset a lot of trans people. I think he's upset a lot of women, because he's painting women in the negative stereotypes that women have been fighting for hundreds of thousands of years. What do you think? Let's have a conversation below. Do you agree with the social experiment or disagree with it? Do you think it was a good idea or a bad idea? If you do want to see me and Liam talk about the rest of the interview where they talk about Book Angel, please like and subscribe and hit that notification bell so you can see that when that comes out next week. I hope you all have a lovely weekend, week, whenever you watch this. Thank you so much, and I will see you guys in the next video. Bye. 30 minutes? That's so long.